Yo, what's up? This is alucidwolf. Today we're gonna talk about just a very basic, another simple setup using Webpack and liteserver. They're just two npm modules that are gonna give us hot reloading and allow us to bundle our JS together. If you want to start using, some ES6 stuff and exporting classes and stuff like that, a lot of times you see some examples and it's like, oh, just get this package JSON and just npm install and you're good to go. So this is kind of just a little more about how you can set it up yourself, just in the very most basic way, so that you don't have to have all this bloat or not really understand what's going on behind the scenes. So we're gonna go ahead and just start with the real basic setup. I'm gonna make my index.html here. Then I'm also going to, there's a couple roadblocks that I came across when I was playing with this before. So let's hope we don't get snagged on any of those, but we'll work through them if they pop up. So one of the first things that you at least want to do is you want to have Webpack, and well, of course you want npm, right? If you don't have that, probably shouldn't be here yet, but go ahead and get that. You can find out where to do that, I'm sure, somewhere other than here. But it's easy. Just go download it. That'll give you npm. And then we're going to install Webpack globally. So you just run npm install Webpack and then G for global. One of the things I ran into is after you install this, you're supposed to just be able to run very basic command that'll select the JavaScript file and compile it and output it to another one. But what I've run into is that when you do that, it requires you to install their CLI. So when you follow the instructions and install the CLI, it actually does it locally, and that has triggered some problems. So what I had to do, and we're going to do it here, is npm install the Webpack CLI, and we're going to do that globally as well. So as long as we have those two configured like that, we should be gravy. So I'm going to show you what's going to happen just with Webpack, and then we're going to add lite-server so we can leverage some hot reloading and not have to refresh the page and that cool stuff. So let's add another new file over here. This is going to be our app.js, and let's do another one, which is going to be our webpack.config.js, not JSON. It's just a JavaScript file because it's going to have module exports in it. I also want to make sure that we npm init this project. Yeah, we'll just go through all the normal stuff. That's fine, because that's going to make our package JSON, right? So it didn't do anything crazy, just made this for us, right? So then what we're going to do, we install that other stuff globally, right? So we don't need to add that here and do it here, right? We're just going to leverage it globally from the command line. So we have our index, right? So what we're going to do first is let's set up our script tag, and it's going to bring in our source for our bundle.js, right? We didn't make a bundle.js yet because that's going to be compiled from here, right? So let's just do a simple log. Sweet. Then we're going to come to Webpack. So basic stuff. Add a script, build something in your JavaScript, and bundle it here. So let's do module.exports equals an object, and we give it an entry point of our local directory, name app.js, and we're going to give it an output, which takes the object and then accepts the file name key, which is going to be the name of the file we want to output. Right? Easy enough. So now what we can do is from our command line down here, we can just run Webpack. Sweet. So what that did is it went into our node modules. It took this stuff, actually it didn't even go in there, it went into the global path where we have our pass set up, access the goodies, and ran that Webpack command, which took this and output it into this. So now what we can do is if we take this and view it in our favorite web browser, check console, bundle, that's right, I always forget to do this because we put it in this folder. So I have to come over here and refresh to do app running, right? So even if I come over here and I change this, right, if I just remove that and I come back here, nothing's happening, right? It doesn't refresh. So we can actually change that. Just one command in the in this file, or just one setting, if you will, option, parameter. We're just gonna set watch to true. Right? So now we can come back here and we can do Webpack. It'll compile it again. And I think, do we have to? No, since we changed it, it'll watch it for us, right? We don't have to run a different command. So let's change it back to running. Okay, it'll compile on its own. We don't have to run it, and we'll come back over here. Okay, but that's not really the workflow we want. I would much rather, when this gets larger and we start importing and destructuring other components that we're bringing in to do some complex work, when we're abstracting things out of this, right? This file is going to get big, and I'm going to want to make a change, and I'm going to want to see it reflected over here, especially if I'm doing testing, right? Throwing in things in try catches and trying stuff. You like to see, hate coming over and having to reload, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into our, we don't need to jump into package.json yet. Let's cancel this, sure. We can do npm install, we're going to do lite-server, right? And our lite-server, we can do save dev, right? So that'll save it to our package.json and put it in the dev dependencies object for this JSON file. We can also, while that's going, we'll make our git ignore, which is good practice, because you're not going to want to check in your node modules, especially if you're working on something. You don't want to commit that whole folder there. So great, lite-server's done. I'm not worried about those right now. So what we can do is in our package.json, we'll jump into our scripts. We'll come down here, and this is just going to make it easier to type for us later. Dev, and we're going to give this action of running the lite-server command. So it's essentially just like typing lite-server, run lite-server, but instead we're going to do npm run dev. Okay, so that's going to spin up the lite-server, and it's going to open it in our favorite browser, and it's going to run the console right away. So the good thing about that is we've only done two things, or three really, right? We installed Webpack, we installed the Webpack CLI, we did both those globally, and then we installed locally just to this project our lite-server, right? So we can run this in the browser. A lot of times what this is good for, like if you're doing anything with Google tracking or their reporting API, it requires you to have the code running on a server, right? So it can't hit your local file system and test the API. So if you want to test locally, instead of committing every time to your repo and testing live, then this is clearly a better way to test something like that as an example. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back here and we can drop this down to app, right? And oh man, how did it not compile? Oh, yes, here's the thing. So you can do, when I was playing with this before, you can do, Webpack does have a dev server, but when I was playing with it, it didn't have the hot reload. It wasn't working correctly. So what I actually did is in Visual Studio Code is I just split the, I just split the terminal down here, and we're gonna run our Webpack command here. So we have our Webpack watching, right? Because we set our watch here, set that to true. So our Webpack is constantly going to be watching our app to compile this and export it to the bundle, which our index is referencing, right? Easy enough. And our lite-server is going to host our site on a local server and give us the hot reloading. So that way I can come over here, and as I'm working, building my functions and testing things, boom, reloaded, didn't even have to touch it. So as soon as I save, right? So it'll probably get a little longer, you know, and of course you can take this many steps further to enhance the bundling. This would be something you'd just be doing dev. You'd have a production environment that you would want to write a string for to compile and minify and uglify everything. So, but that's just the super basic stuff. You want to get a quick sandbox up and running, and especially if you need a server, you want hot reloading, and you also want you know, to use some ES6 stuff for JavaScript, which, you know, gives you more class-like syntax. You know, if you're coming from, of course, like everybody says, coming from a C# language and stuff like that, it becomes more familiar. But that's the quick and dirty. So hope you learned something, and I'll catch y'all on the flip side.